The chapter that we are discussing about today is on quality assurance, keeping the supply chain aspect in mind. So these are the learning objectives of things that you should be knowing at the end of this chapter. Just moving on, I'm sure you all have by now very well known what is quality or what is the definition of quality. So I'm not going to go define quality, but we are going to speak about quality and the different role players in the industry that contribute towards quality output, towards quality products and quality processes. So the industry as such we know is made up of different players. There are wholesalers, there are brands, then there are designers and retailers. And each of these organizations, they have their own view of what quality is for them. Quality also integrates processes and ensures that the process as such has been qualitative enough, and they use price as one of the determining factors in defining the quality of products that they offer. So this is more or less about what we're going to cover in this chapter. So be it quality assurance, or we say quality management systems, they all in general have the same goal, which is about providing a quality product that the customers want to buy and to develop loyal customers based on that quality. The principles and processes that are involved in quality. So quality as such has to do with value of every action that is being taken and the end product of these actions. So actions here would mean the process itself, the procedure, the steps adopted, starting from the beginning of the supply chain to the product that is delivered to the consumer. So everything that happens in between forms part of all these actions, and these actions result in a good product or a good outcome that is sent off to the consumer. And for that to happen, the reason behind it is we need to satisfy consumers, because that has a direct impact on our supply chain. If the consumers are happy, we know obviously what we are doing is qualitative enough. Okay. Let's just discuss a bit more about the principles that are followed. So, firstly, the activities and the primary actions taken by any organization should always be customer focused and meet customer expectations. Now, to do this, we will obviously require leaders in the organization who provide a context in which all the employees are accountable and assume responsibility in all matters, including decision making. Okay, so the engagement of employees on all levels will require the top management or the leaders to be diligent in assessing employees' needs and also in developing plans to meet those needs. So, for example, leaders may need to educate employees so that they are able to reach a certain level of comfort with their participation in this process. The education in this process, it may also include information on how to work in teams within the organization, or how to deal with conflict and negotiation as the team works towards a final decisions. And then another need that maybe would be about working together collectively in teams so that all employees are doing what they say they should do in regards to quality, or in regards to quality management systems. Then we speak about collection of information. Okay. So to carry out all of these discussions, the information needs to be collected across the supply chain that provides evidence as to what works well or what needs to be improved so that it can work better. This is where the big data comes in. Okay. So an organization will also need to discuss what would help and what wouldn't help to improve the supply chain processes that speak about quality or that sustain quality. but still having an eye towards ongoing improvements and continuous improvements as well. So these assessments need to be carried out to determine what resources may be needed. So what will happen then? Ultimately, each organization must now identify what processes will be needed to be put in place both within the organization and across organizations. Those organizations that form part of the supply chain with the organization. It can be any organization that we're talking about, but not just with that one particular organization, but also the different role players of the supply chain. Then we speak about approaches and methodologies. So, in terms of quality or in terms of quality assurance, there are four prominent approaches that are adopted to achieve quality and customer satisfaction. The first approach is around Six Sigma. Now, what is Six Sigma? It's basically an approach that is used to enhance not just the business but also the systems of the business with the objective of increasing profit but at the same time sustaining customer satisfaction. Now, when we say sustaining customer satisfaction, now it is achieved by both producing a quality product and also maintaining the quality of that product along with customer service. So, this Six Sigma approach is basically a systematic design to enhance the processes of an organization, and it relies on various methods. Then, the second approach is about the term lean. Now, the core idea of this lean is to maximize customer value while minimizing waste. But as such, if we think of lean, it would mean creating more value for customers with fewer resources. But not just that, lean is also about elimination of waste. It is also about improving efficiency and decreasing errors, which in turn will lead to decrease in the cost of operation. It will lead to greater customer and employee satisfaction. So lean is about making improvements through little steps, and it's an ongoing process. So the lean approach is also frequently combined with Six Sigma approach, and it depends from organization to organization how they use it. Then the third approach is quality management system. Sometimes in short it's called QMS as well. So this is basically a formalized system. And what does it do? It documents processes, procedures, and responsibilities for achieving quality policies and objectives. So QMS, it also helps coordinate and it directs an organization's activities to meet customer requirements, to meet regulatory requirements, and also improve effectiveness and efficiency. Now, the fourth approach is basically an international standard that documents the requirements for quality management systems, which we know very well as ISO 9001. Now, this is the only standard that certifies quality management systems, although it's not a requirement, but they still do that. The standard speaks to a number of quality management principles as well. So, in the industry that we come from, some of the companies have formally adopted to one of these processes, some have adopted to some organic programs based on the goal of supplying the best possible product at the price that the customer is willing to pay or the consumer is willing to pay. Now, the processes and procedures that are used in production or are used in manufacturing of clothing items are often dictated by the consumer. We very well know that. It's always a backward flow. So that consumer could be the same company from whom the goods are being produced, or it could be a customer, which is a contractor whose main role is to provide finished goods. So it can be anyone, okay? And whatever is dictated by the customer, we comply with it and we discuss it and we try and ensure that we achieve it. So today, most companies will require to formalize standards in order to do business with them. We look for companies that are certified or who have formalized standards in them. So initially this was not the case. Previously the focus was in the past was always about quality that is focused on the product. but now it has moved keeping the corporate social responsibility, it has moved keeping the sustainability in mind, where the issue of quality has grown in scope to include the physical plant, to include the equipment, as well as the human capital. So quality today has become a much more bigger thing than just about quality of the product. Then there are certain essential steps in the quality management system in the fashion industry. So, with the new thinking around quality management systems, the philosophy has grown and now it includes 7 steps, and they are the following, as you can see here on the screen. So, let me just quickly go through each of them in short. The design, basically, the design of a product, it's sort of a creation that is carried out either by an individual, which is a designer, or it can be by a team of product developers, it can be merchandisers. And design, generally, it begins by identifying products that will satisfy a consumer need whenever we design a new product. So this process that involves designing is really the origin of the supply chain. Now, many of you ask, where does the supply chain start from and where does it end? So this idea, or that seed that is generated in the form of designing something, that is where supply chain is born. Um, and it is administered, and it already has an effect based on the type of product that is designed and the market that is intended for. So if an organization has an eye on quality, the designer will raise questions about the present workings of the supply chain and whether the supply chain is able to develop and deliver the end product after that is being designed. So now, after the product is designed, it has to be built or constructed. That is where the build part comes into picture. So there will be a size specification sheet, or there will be a detail sheet that will be developed, and that will convey not only the size information but also about the production facility and all that is required to construct the product. So much of this work that we are doing today obviously is used via CAD programs, as you all know, and these sheets, they become sort of a roadmap for building the product. Then from build, through the use of advanced technology, the companies that are using product lifecycle management, or companies that are using enterprise resource planning, which we in short call as ERP, they use these systems to deploy and communicate all the information that is being designed and built. So all that has the 2 steps that has happened before, that is deployed by these systems or softwares that the company follows. Now these systems, they have greatly also reduced the time, so the time that is needed to communicate the vital information to various partners in the supply chain. It also cuts down on lead time, and it also greatly improves the supply chain process. So this here already involves lean thinking. Now, once the policies, procedures, and the protocols are put in place, they need to be controlled as well to make sure that the process is unfolding in a systematic way by adopting control measures. So people and their resources, they must also be used to identify areas that needs monitoring. For example, there is a simple need to be aware of the calendar, how the seasons overlap, the number of products that any company can be working on at one time, and throw into the fast fashion supply chain. One can quickly lose control of checks and balances that are not in place. And how can, as an organization, one can control what is taking place in the partnering organization that may exist across the globe. So this is where the control is put in place to ensure that things happen the right way. Then having systems in place is meaningless unless there are ways to measure performance. Now we're controlling it, we're deploying it, but how do we measure all of that is happening? So the points of measurement are determined by companies that are involved in process or are predetermined and agreed upon at the point of negotiation. So there are several activities that measure um, or are measured is, for example, purchase of the fiber, the development of the yarn, the creation of the fabric, or the production of finished garments. These are all measures. Now, measures in this case may not be physical measuring of garments, but measures of how the overall process is progressing. So Does the company need to intervene to remediate a certain situation, say perhaps a late delivery or perhaps a fabric that has a failed quality test? So each of these points along the supply chain requires measurement of quality to ensure that the outcomes are desired. Now, finally, to understand how well a company or how well organization is working, there must be a review process to help determine next steps, still keeping an eye towards constant improvement, as we spoke in the previous slides. So, the quality practices as such, they can and they should appear at any point in the supply chain, and they are such that they can be instituted or managed by any of the trading partners. And it is about building quality throughout the entire production process, throughout the entire supply chain. There are designers, there will be buyers, there will be production workers. All the employees involved in the product pipeline must also make sure that they are working towards what consumers are paying them for. So, quality as such becomes a very winning strategy for consumers, retailers, and manufacturers when it is executed properly. So, setting up a quality management system is an intensive process because it involves people, it is people centered, and that it rests on the establishment of standards. So, specifications need to be there, they need to be more specific than standards, they should contain additional details beyond the general descriptors that we have already in our standards. So, there needs to be viable tools, there needs to be list of points in the supply chain at which there is some sort of quality inspection of some sort that is taking place. So not just actual measuring of garments or physical taste, there needs to be um, in the various points of the supply chain this quality inspection that needs to be carried on. Now these are sort of four of the major areas. One is the fiber, one is yarn, one is fabric, and one is finished garment. So fiber stage inspection, whether it is natural or synthetic, whether it must be inspected or meet certain standards, because obviously it is the beginning of the process. If the fiber is of poor quality, then obviously the rest of the product will follow suit. Then comes to yarn, so which is required to knit or to weave or to create a non-woven. It must be of a certain quality or fabric, and finished garment will not meet up the standards if the yarn hasn't been set up in a certain way. Then we come to fabric inspections, which are made before the fabric leaves the mill as well as when it is received by the manufacturer. Now it needs to be inspected, it needs to be checked on the roll and then and again on the cutting table. And then we have finished garments which are inspected in the manufacturing line where while the garments are being produced, and normally at the end of the production, like you all have seen and known, prior to packing, to make sure that the final product is adhering to the specifications that were provided. Also, in addition to that, the final customers may or may not execute their own inspections. So, if the garments were purchased with a LC, which is a letter of credit, then obviously the bank will need to require this certificate verifying that the shipment was inspected to the satisfaction of the customer or before even releasing the funds to the manufacturer. This is just making sure that everything is in place. So, as with all things that are related to the supply chain, when we as individuals touch the product, whether it is at the fiber stage or a finished garment stage, they want to be paid for their services. And this holds true even if the people responsible for inspection are on the company payroll, as there is a cost associated with the time that they must be accounted for. So, therefore, quality insurance involves cost considerations as well. So, you can see how it impacts not just people but the process and the system in itself if quality hasn't been administered to the level that it should be. Now, administering quality programs in the industry, there can be in the form of internal quality assurance or it can be in the form of external quality assurance. Now, if one is a large company or a large brand or a large retailer, often they have in-house departments that are responsible for the quality aspect of the products that they produce or sell to the consumer. There are many companies that have teams that report up through the sourcing or production department. So for them, their departmental structures are different. They might not have a in-house quality department, but they might have someone within the sourcing or production department. Now, whether to have an internal team or to have an external team is generally determined by the size and the scope of the company or the number of products that it offers on sale. At times, it is also not uncommon for large companies to have their own internal team with specific responsibilities, which perhaps might be supported by an external partner or external testing organization. But in addition to that, having quality assurance people on as staff at a central location or in the head office is helpful, because what happens, large companies, they employ auditors who travel around the globe. They inspect factories and production based on companies' protocols. Now, to keep that tight control on both internal and external quality assurance processes and procedures, companies are nowadays also using the existing functionality that is built in ERP or enterprise resource planning or product lifecycle management systems. They are used to assist companies in the quality assurance process. Again, in any supply chain, I've already mentioned many times about clear communication. The same happens in quality as well. There needs to be a clear communication of requirements during the product development and production process, which is essential to ensure quality in the supply chain. And not just this, in addition to all of the systems that are used in the production process, there are also specific products that are used in the quality assurance. Now, some of them, for example, would be OneSource and Bureau Veritas. Now, these are designed to provide a sort of holistic overview of quality assurance, which will include testing, it will include inspections, it will include factory audits. So there are many ways to approach quality. It can be in terms of record keeping. So again, companies can either use few or all of the methods and systems depending on their own industry's supply chain. Now let's speak about external quality assurance. Now the decision to use the services of an external QA or external quality assurance organization can be based on various factors. It could be because that is what the company that is buying the product from wants it. It could be the retailer, or it could be the company itself who is producing it just to make sure that the products are certified and tested. It could be the retailer that would require certified physical test results before approving for production, just so that they know that they are safe. It could also be based on the company itself, the manufacturer itself, because they are large companies, they have hundreds of factories around the globe, and the need to have inspections completed on finished good becomes essential for them to not lose out on the control. Remember the 7 steps, to not lose out on the control, to have measures in place to minimize any kind of last minute hassles. To facilitate external quality assurance programs, as a company, one could engage agents to inspect finished goods at the factory on one's behalf, based on the specifications or based on the sheets that has been provided by the company to the QA. In most cases, also these agents are asked or are limited to only performing audits, and they say, okay, you don't have to do any kind of physical testing. But if the requirements need physical testing, then obviously there will be, as companies setting up quality assurance programs, they will be also having people trained in the company who would have to engage the services, or who would have people who are in charge of performing these duties. So there are many companies that also perform textile testing. There are companies that perform manufacturing facilities or ensure compliance with various standards and regulations and provide training. So out of them, some of the companies, like I've mentioned three here, is Intertech. there is SGS Group, and there is Bureau Veritas. Now, these are full service companies and they are integral parts of the supply chain. So, as you can see, it completely depends on what kind of company you are and what are your requirements and your own partner's requirements in the supply chain. So, in conclusion, the process of striving for quality plays a major role in the industry. Then, the quality of one's product represents who the company is, or what does it stand for, what do they value on and then there are many different levels of quality, and they're not always dependent on the cost factor. The consumer normally is often misunderstood by understanding that high value will obviously mean having high quality, but it is often a perception, as level of quality is not always based on price. So, yeah, in today's total quality management, or in today's quality management systems, they involve a lot of employees or a team of employees. It can be internal team, it can be external team. Whichever is the case, resources are needed to ensure the quality of the product and ultimately to satisfy the consumer. So it is clear over time that quality and how quality in organizations has completely evolved to what it was before. So this is where I have a question to you all is, given that what you know about quality and the industry that you belong to, what do you see as the next evolutionary change that will be introduced in the world of quality improvements? Do you feel there is being evolution going on? If so, what is it that you think is going to evolve, and in what aspect, especially around quality? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for listening.